Welcome everybody to our presentation. We are Laia Alguacil, Ana Fon, Coral Peña and Carla Romero, and we are going to talk about language teaching in special needs. You might be wondering now whether it is or not an important topic to explain. Well, nowadays, as teachers, we face a lot of challenges. How to manage different learning rhythms and levels, which methodologies are meaningful and how we can implement them, which are the best resources we can use. But there is a challenge that we always must bear in mind. A big challenge, a huge challenge, and that is inclusion in schools. In 2019, there were more than 63,000 children with specific needs of educational support in Catalan primary schools. For instance, I had a friend of mine that was not good at English because she had dyslexia and, thus, had trouble learning a second language at the same pace as her classmates did. Let me ask you something. Was laughing at her the best solution? Shouldn't we, as teachers, help these children improve their learning process? As you may know, the concept of special needs has changed over the last decades. That means we are still on time. It is extremely important to deepen this topic in order to get to know how we, as teachers, can help all of our students to learn English effectively. To tackle the topic, we are going to state what inclusion is, as it is the first step. Then, we are going to move on to the aspects that we, as teachers, should avoid. Later, we are going to comprehend the way a foreign language is learned and how we can detect whether a student really has or not a special need. To finish with, we are going to watch and analyze a real example that could take place in any school.
As you may know, special education and special needs are not new concepts. In fact, they have been around for the past decades. However, their meaning has changed along with the educational beliefs, approaches, and trends. This means that the terms we use when talking about special education are different at each time and place. Therefore, we think it's necessary to define how we approach and understand special education and special needs currently in our context. For the past decade, special education in Catalonia has evolved significantly. Now we are talking about inclusion. But exactly what is inclusion? Essentially, an inclusive school does not exclude anyone because there are just no different categories of students. There is only one category of students. This implies a big conceptual change because no longer do we have ordinary students and special students. Now it's just students. Of course, each one of them is different, with their own characteristics and individual needs. That is because diversity is a natural fact. The most normal thing is, indeed, that we are different. Overall, an inclusive school comprehends different students who can learn together. In this new context, the meaning of special needs has also changed. In the past, we used the term special educational needs to talk about a deficiency or an impairment that can be physical, social, cognitive, or sensorial and directly affects the learning process. Therefore, the teacher is required to make a partial or total change on the curriculum so the child can reach their own best. This approach to special education necessarily implies putting a label on the student based on their limitations, which is not really coherent with inclusion, is it? Instead, now we are using a more coherent term, specific needs of educational support, which includes the latter and adds those students who are vulnerable in any ways, such as students with learning or communication disorders and, on the other hand, gifted and talented children. It also contemplates kids from disadvantaged socioeconomic backgrounds who are at risk of early school dropout, and finally, foreign students with late incorporation to school and linguistic needs. In this context, teachers are supposed to design universal teaching proposals addressed to everyone, and only if it is necessary to provide the additional support to those kids who need it. Adaptations are no longer the norm, but the exception.
What should we avoid? We should avoid categorizing, diagnosing, and trying to fix our students, as well as adaptations and creating different activities to SEN students. To finish with, we should also avoid separating SEN students from the rest.
But have you ever wondered how it is to learn a new language? Do you remember how you felt when you were doing it? Here we have an audio and a text in Japanese. Let's listen to it.
月影をどこまでも海は広がる銀色の優しさ
Was it difficult for you to comprehend it? Could you understand the text? Just a single word? That is because learning a foreign language is a challenge for us and even more for children. For this reason, it is extremely important to see how a foreign language is learned. So, how is a foreign language learned? A foreign language is learned by using it to communicate in different contexts, such as role plays, games, or group tasks. More than a content, it is an ability that students have to master. And the teacher is the connection between the teaching cultural environment and the culture of the language taught. That is the basis of a competence-based learning. And which are the main factors that need to be considered when learning a foreign language? They are the biological psychological ones, such as the age or personality, the cognitive, such as the intelligence or language skills, and the affective, such as the attitude and motivation. However, not only it is important the individual factors but also the contextual ones, that is, the student's environment. Children learn implicitly, without conscious thought, reflection, or effort. That is why they need a large amount of language input, meaningful teaching methods, and a long period of time to master the foreign language.
So, as teachers, if we realize something's not going as planned in our classroom, if we observe warning signs in our students, how can we know for sure if they have a specific learning difficulty or if they are just struggling learning a language that's different from their mother tongue? In this case, communication between teachers becomes essential as we only have contact with these children in the English classroom, so we don't normally know how they respond to other subjects. So talking to the teacher will help us follow one path or another. That means, has this child any learning disability or does he or she have trouble learning English? As we've said before, although the problem a child might face can be the same, the cause can be different depending on if the child has special needs or if he or she is just struggling learning a new language, as English, for example. So, for instance, whereas dyslexic children need more time learning sound-symbol relationships while they are reading, students that have difficulties learning a new language might be confused with sound-symbol relationships when the sounds are unfamiliar in their mother tongue. Now, taking into account what we have explained before, I'm going to ask you something. How should teacher intervention look like when we have children with special needs in our classroom? What should we do? So let's watch a practical example in which 4 teachers gather up together to share their experiences as English teachers. Which strategies do you think they will carry out in order to help their students improve their learning process?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Girls, long time no see. Tell me about your experiences at school.
Hi, girls. So everything is really fine. Today we have started a new project about sciences, and it's going really great. What about you? How's everything going?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm glad to see you again, girls. Quite nice in my case, but not so good.
Oh no, what's the matter? Tell us what's wrong. Maybe we can help you out.
Sure, tell us about it.
Well, I have 2 children in my classroom with special needs, and they have difficulties when learning English. One of them has been diagnosed with visual disability, and the other one has ADHD. And it's very difficult for me to use strategies with them so that they can learn English too.
Oh, I see. That can be really challenging sometimes.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I had a similar experience last year. I had a student with dyslexia, so I know what you're going through. It's really difficult. But I think the most important thing for them is to feel included in the classroom. So, what do you think? Maybe you can tell us what you normally do, and we can give you some tips.
Yes, well, what I do is I create different activities and I adapt activities for these children so that they can also learn English, but at a lower level.
Oh, that's something I avoid doing. I don't think it's a good strategy, in fact.
I agree with you, Anna. Why don't you try and give them the same work so they can work each other? Maybe gather them in pairs or small groups.
Do you really think that's good? Because I have tried that in the past and they not really seem to be interested.
Well, the first step is getting to know their interests.
That sounds good, but how can I do that with so many children in the classroom? I find it impossible.
I know that might seem like a huge challenge. I know what you mean because it actually happened to me. But then my school started working with these new methodologies, like project-based learning, which works wonders because you start working from their interests. So they're usually super motivated to work.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree with Laya. I also work with projects, and kids love it. It's great because you can plan differentiated activities, including multimodal resources, which is really good because everyone has different learning styles and therefore they learn in different ways. And as a result, everybody learns meaningfully while they are enjoying. So that's great.
I see. That sounds pretty interesting, but I don't know. I don't know how can children with special needs participate in this kind of projects.
Oh, just like everyone else. I would say don't be too focused on what they cannot do and just see what they have to offer. You might be surprised because I was.
Sure, I think they will actually benefit from it. I have a child with ADHD in my class, and he loves working with projects, especially when he can participate in activities because he hates sitting all day. So,
I couldn't agree more. I think something I would advise you to do, is to create contextualized activities because then they can relate everything they work on with their daily lives. And then they become aware of how important it is to learn English.
Totally. I usually do this working with storytellings in which you can see some common expressions that they already know in their mother tongue. And this way it's easier for them to transfer the new vocabulary and grammar structures into the foreign language they are learning.
Oh, that's fine. I'll take into account all these tips you have given me, girls. I think they can work. I'll try to be a more inclusive teacher from now on so that all my students can learn English.
Well, cheers to that.
Cheers!
cheers.
Cheers!
To conclude, which are the main characteristics of an inclusive English teacher? First of all, to have high expectations for everyone and avoid labels or stereotypes. It is essential not to focus on what the students cannot do, but on what they can actually do. Secondly, to bear in mind that there is a huge variety of learning styles, and for this reason, diversify the learning materials and activities so that everyone can develop their learning process. And last but not least, to use flexible, inclusive, and competence based ELT methodologies so that students have an active participation, use language in different contexts, and interact with the classmates and the teacher effectively. Here you have an interesting topic to talk about. What do you think about this? Do you agree or disagree? And here there's another issue which is really controversial. What do you think about this? Are you for or against it?
Thank you very much for your attention. We hope you've learned as much as we have.